right, aloha kako. Welcome to our Gatekeepers presentation. Our hui consists of Austin Chang, Kylie Nakata, Maya Walton, and myself, Malia Evans. We want to acknowledge and mahalo Vic, Ke'ahi, Dan, and the Purple Maya crew for giving us this incredible opportunity to create and innovate. Next slide, please. 18 years ago, I had a dream. While my body lay slumbering in the darkness of night, my spirit was on a journey to Po, the spiritual world of my ancestors. In my dream, it was twilight, that dusky span when night begins its silent creeping into the clamor of day. When shadows wrap you like a kihei, comforting, safe, like the arms of a loving parent. I stood beside a path. It wound between barren hills, receding into a sepia landscape, grainy and lacking color like an old-fashioned photo. Standing on the path were people, hundreds of people. The length of the multitude extended until those standing in the distance were a dark line on the horizon. As I stood beside that path, in the dimness of approaching night, a glimmer of awareness began to grow within my na'au. Although their features were indistinct and hidden in shadows, there was a strong bond, a connection that flowed between us all. Within me, pulsing through my heart and veins, was their life-giving blood, a lei of red feathers that bound us, one to each other. They were my ohana, my lifeline to the past and to the future. I realized in that moment the deep kule'ana, the responsibility and privilege I had to honor my ancestors by understanding the depth of knowledge they acquired because of their intimate relationship with their environment and with each other. That dream vision opened up a gate in me. The aina began to call to me. I started researching the cultural landscapes and history of Waialua, where I lived. Then I began to write for our local newspaper, continuing the literary traditions of my ancestors. I became an advocate and educator to remind people of the rich cultural and historical legacy that surrounded them. It's 18 years later, and that vision lives within this app called Gatekeepers. Next slide, please. So what is that vision and that dream? It has to do with Ea. Ea means sovereignty, rule, independence. Ea means life, air, breath. Ea means to rise, to go up, to raise. So this app seeks to educate and activate so that we can all rise together and protect and preserve those things we deem valuable. Next slide. So I introduced you to the dream, and now I'll introduce you to a few of my ancestors who inspired it. My kupuna kane kuakahi, Solomon Hanohano, and kupuna kane kualua, Jonathan Nakila, were newspaper editors and worked to preserve all things Hawaiian through the Kanupepa Ku'oko'a, the longest published Hawaiian language newspaper in Hawaii. The Hawaiian language newspapers were critical in sharing ideas, documenting knowledge, and engaging the highly literate Hawaiian population in current and political affairs. Next slide. So the gatekeepers of the past, they utilized emerging technology of the printing press and writing to document and preserve cultural information. If we remember that this was a very tumultuous time of loss and decline of the Hawaiian population, and the newspapers were a primary and rich source of Hawaiian history, culture, and the sharing of ideas. Most of the writers and editors were Kanaka Maoli, and they presented a native view of historical events in Hawaii and the world. Once again, the word ea keeps coming up with educate and activating the lahui. Next slide. So the gatekeepers of the present are utilizing emerging technology, just like our kupuna, to document cultural and environmental information. Gatekeepers is a living archive and inventory that preserves local history. It's a community-based tool to educate and activate kule'ana and advocate for the proper stewardship of cultural and natural resources. And we are once again going through some tumultuous times of job loss and food insecurity, and communities may need to become self-sustainable and utilize their resources within their communities. Next page, please. So I'm gonna hand this off to my friend Austin, who will give you some of the features of the app.
Great. Aloha, everyone. My name is Austin, and I will be introducing our Glide app. So, as Hanu said, Glide is a platform to create mobile web apps that require no coding or programming experience, and all of the data is stored on a Google spreadsheet. So, which for us, that includes names, addresses, descriptions, links to web pages, images, and videos. If you'd like, you can use your smartphone camera to scan this QR code and download our app on your phone. So when you first open the app, you'll see our homepage, and it introduces what GateKeepers is, a unique way to discover, archive, and protect the local history of communities. Through education and stewardship, we can protect these significant places for future generations. And then it goes on, if you scroll down, it goes on to introduce all of the other tabs we have in our app, including Wahimakamai with a map of Waialua, which comes from a map created by Kamehameha Schools, and it includes all of the ahupua'a. The tabs Mele and Oli, Olelo no Eau, Kupuna Voices, Reports, and External Resources, and we'll go through each tab right now. So our first is Wahimakamai. This includes all of the significant places we decided to feature in our app. So that's historic sites, Lo'ikalo, Loko'i'a, Ahupua'a, Mauna, Heiau, and a fishing shrine. And if you tap in one of these places, let's see, I go into Waimea Valley, it has a short description of what it is and a little history of it, which Moku and Ahupua'a is included, or which is located. It's historic map, so if I click on that, it brings up a map of the place. Some mo'olelo of Waimea Valley or any of the places that you decide to click on. And also some of the places have websites and social media links. So this is our Wahimakamai tab. Next is the Mele Oli tab, and it looks very similar, but instead when you click on it, a place, it has links to, like this one is lyrics and translations of a song about that place. In this case, kind of point. Let's see. And also videos of performances of that place. So now I will hand it over to Maya, and she will share more about the other tabs in our app.
Okay, thanks, Austin. I think everyone can see my screen. I'm gonna show everyone these last two tabs to the right. So we'll start here with Olelo no Eau. We wanted to feature Olelo no Eau in this app, Hawaiian proverbs that memorialize Aina, speak to traditional Hawaiian values, and reveal how Hawaiians understood the world around them. So this particular tab is organized a little bit differently. It's in a list, and we chose this format because you can see a little bit of the Olelo no Eau here in the preview. This tab is really cool because you can also switch here and view the different places in Waialua through this map. And when you click on a particular place, say for example, like click on here, the Kukani local birthstones, what you'll see are Olelo no Eau followed by the translation or notes in English. And as you scroll down, you'll see all of the various Olelo no Eau that we have featured for this particular place. Moving on to the far right, we have a tab that we've labeled Kupuna Voices. We feature kupuna here because they are living sources of knowledge, culture, community values, and history. And this particular tab is organized by the names of the kupuna. So if you click on someone, it'll show a link for an ArcGIS story map. And these story maps feature interviews that were completed by the UH Manoa North Shore Ethnographic Field School in the year 2018. And so these particular story maps, if you scroll down, you'll see video clips from interviews that feature perspectives from kupuna of these places in Waialua. And I'm going to hand it off to Kylie now.
Okay, so I am going to present. In this pull-out tab we have on the side, we have just a couple more tabs. Our first one that I'll explain is our external resources tab. So as Malia was explaining, our overarching goal of the app was to educate and activate our community. And our app is really tailored towards places within the community and the significance of those places, but we also recognize that there are other ways to educate and activate the community. And so this is some of the resources that we have gathered through this cohort. And one of these resources, just as an example, when you click on this, it's Hōʻike Online, and it was created by cultural advocate Pohai Panok, and she actually came and presented this to us, and we thought it was a great resource because not only does it have initiatives for virtual learning, but it also has initiatives for in-person learning as well when that becomes available again. We also have tabs for Wehewehe, which we all know is the Hawaiian language dictionary online. And so all of these really, we think, help those who want to further expand their wealth of knowledge when it comes to the Hawaiian culture. Another tab that we have is just our resources that we utilized. So these are some of the books and online websites that we got our information from. And if you see here, Malia, she actually was a great resource for us. She's very, very educated. And so this is kind of how we documented where we found our information. So now I'm going to pass it back over to Malia, who will explain our last tab, our reports tab. I think you might be muted.
Okay, so our reports tab, let's see. Kylie, would you be able to bring that up? Oh, there we go. Okay. So reports are really important if you really want to advocate for your aina, understanding what the topography looks like, what archaeology has been done. We've been fortunate that we found a lot of online content, which includes management plans, archaeological reports, cultural impact assessments. And if you look at all the different types of documents, it really will give you a more holistic view of the function of these places and really what was going on in the past and what's going on in the present. So for me, with my archaeology background, I know that having access to this can really help community members understand what's there on their landscapes, and also be able to go and testify if they need to write letters to the editor, if they need to advocate in any way for their treasured places, their wahi makamai, then they'll have access to those resources. So that was a real important component that we wanted to include. And the cultural reports, there's thesis or dissertations. We tried to include a nice, well-rounded group of different reports that could help the community. And I think we are going to pass it I'm going to pass it to Kylie, yes?
Yes. Okay. So we actually did test run our app within the community, and we received a good number of responses. We received 27 responses. Age range was pretty widespread, from 21 to 68. We had a lot of different occupations. So just an example is we had Hawaiian studies teacher, self-employed, social worker, postdoctoral students, etc. And it was a pretty even split between female and male responses. So overall, we received pretty positive responses, and some of the things that they said in their responses, they said it was useful for people who are interested but don't really know how to get the information. And, though our app focuses on Wailua, it is a template for other communities. And it's great for Hawaiian stories to be told, educating students and yourself as well. And we also got 2 kumuhula from Waialua. They responded to our app and wanted to share some mele and oli that they composed, so that's also on our app. So we also had, we sent out our app, and we also sent out a survey associated with the app. And so on that survey, we asked the people who used our app if they had any suggestions or any feedback regarding the app and what they wanted to see. And so some responses that we got asked us to describe the tabs more in depth, just so that there wouldn't be any confusion as to what the purpose was. And so we actually went ahead and did that, which is why our homepage is so detailed. Another thing that they asked was, some people are more visual learners, I know I am, so they asked if we could add a map which could show all the sites, and we actually did add that. So in the Olelo no Eau tab, as Maya was explaining, when you click on the map icon, it shows you this map, and if you click on this, it'll actually show you where you are in reference to those locations. So I think that's really cool, because people who are just in that area will see where they're close to and where they're a little farther from. We also received some feedback from people who actually lived in Waialua. We got a lot. We got 7 responses from people who lived in Waialua, and they said it was great because they found information about places they didn't know existed. So that was one of our goals of the app, to educate and activate. So we also recognize that there are future improvements to be made to the app, and some ideas that we have are adding winds and rains of Waialua, so weather patterns, and understanding cultural practices and protocols when entering these treasured places. So I know that as a community, sometimes there's a frustration when we see people going into these culturally significant sites and not knowing what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So we're thinking of, adding that so that people know how they should act and what's respectful in these places. We also want to add mo'olelo and ka'au of Waialua to our app. So some of the reflections that we had, I'll share first. This was a really, really great learning experience. Not only did I learn from Vic, Keahi, and Dan, but I also learned from my group mates as well. And it was just a great experience overall, because I know that this app is really something that can be used not only within the Hawaiian community, but within the larger community as well for education.
I guess I'll share next some reflections. By working with a fabulous team, I learned so much about my Hawaiian culture, about teamwork, and it was also a very enjoyable experience for me. And as for this Makers Bootcamp in general, I feel like I really gained the confidence to take ideas in my head and use new technologies to solve problems that I'm passionate about. Thank you.
I'll go next. This is Maya. Yeah, thank you so much to all the Kumu of the Makers Bootcamp. We learned so much from each of you. And yesterday when our group was reflecting on the process and the app that we built together, thank you so much to Malia, who was a really wonderful teacher and a leader in our group. One thing that I'm walking away with is I was kind of scared at first, this idea of sending a prototype out into the world before maybe it was final. But now I see how useful that is to get feedback on prototypes and go through this process of iteration. And I'm going to carry that with me outside of the boot camp. I think prototypes, iteration, this is like a great tool to have, and it'll help us be more adaptive and more resilient, especially during these tumultuous times, like Malia said.
So my reflections were, I had such a great team, really incredible skill sets. Every single one of them brought to the table or to the app such an incredible diversity of knowledge. And I so appreciated that, because I'm one of those like not tech savvy people either. But this really forced me out of my comfort zone. I was forced to learn things that I didn't know before, the technology aspects, given tools that I feel are so important. Like now we have tools to take an idea, this really ephemeral kind of thing, and bring it into a physical reality. So for me, I just really appreciated those tools that were given to us. And also with the app, you know, it's not just for places, it could be utilized for institutions or organizations, because they have culture as well. And they have institutional knowledge that can be recorded and preserved. So we're hoping that this will be a template for other communities who treasure their places, and for even organizations who want to make sure that they document and record their own very special culture. So mahalo.
A big virtual Zoom round of applause for Gatekeepers. You guys are amazing. I'm just really kind of moved at this moment. And I know it's true of the Got Grinds group who's about to come up and share too, but you know, such a gift to work with you all. You know, you come with such bravery and such a great spirit of building on the knowledge of your place and of your kumu and of your kopuna, your ancestors, and across the board that applies. And so I think Purple Maya Foundation, I'll speak on behalf of Purple Maya, and just saying we're so lucky and so happy to have you guys as part of the Ohana. And like I said in the beginning, for all of you participants, this is more of a beginning than an end. So we're going to keep bothering you and bugging you and inviting you and asking you to come join us and make some more stuff. It's really amazing what we can do when we're building things together in community like this. So you guys are definitely inspiring me today and for the last 8 weeks. So mahalo. I don't see any big questions in the chat, but I do see that, you know, people love how you're responding to collecting and responding to feedback, and in 3 weeks already integrating input into your product. So pretty impressive, you know, for all the teams that in such a short time, you guys are iterating, not only coming up with a prototype like Maya talked about, but iterating on it and improving on it so quickly. So nice work.